From year to year, month to month, week to week, and day to day, people across the world are obsessed with a phenomenon that is professional wrestling. But why? 101 reasons to love professional wrestling. There are many components of professional wrestling that should be both understood and celebrated, in no particular order. Psychology. Psychology is a scientific study of the mind and behavior. It's been said that all we are is dust in the wind. Psychology has been a thing we have dealt with since psychiatrists have begun to contemplate the human mind. We are drawn to certain things. Certain things are triggers that affect our emotion. Some things make us happy. Some things make us sad. And some things pull us to the edge of our seats in anxious anticipation. It could be the bottom of the ninth in a suspenseful baseball game. It could be a well-written movie that enthralls for our attention. It could be any form of emotional manipulation that raises the ire of the audience. And if there's a way to manipulate an audience, then professional wrestling is gonna pull all strings possible to sell a character, a match, or a story. In a wrestling match, the objective is to convince the audience that what they're seeing is completely real. And that is where psychology comes in. In professional wrestling, psychology encompasses all the little things. It's the little things like working over one body part the whole match to give your finishing move that much more impact. It's stuff like knowing when to tease a finish just right to get the crowd on the edge of their seats. To dive much deeper would be to reveal literally everything that makes professional wrestling, well, professional wrestling. Because when it's done right, the matches are pure art. The fans just watch it and cheer, but most people don't understand. They are being manipulated. It's not just punch kick, punch kick. If you watch the greats, or even those who have a grasp on match psychology, then you're set for life. The match tells the story. How well of a story in the ring is what separates wrestlers from legends. If a finishing move is a submission move that hurts the leg, then the obvious psychology would be to work the leg until the big finish. Psychology is what paints the canvas that is professional wrestling. Each stroke of paint brings the audience closer and closer to exploding. Then finally, it's a framed masterpiece. It's part of history. It's a match that fans will never forget. It's saying the perfect thing to manipulate the crowd. It's hitting the perfect move to convince the crowd the near fall they are seeing is gonna be the end of the match. Regardless, psychology is vital. Yeah, it's always gonna hurt to take a hit or to fall on the mat, but it's gonna hurt a lot more if the audience is sleeping because you failed to tell a convincing story. Romance. Our society loves a good romance story. Love is so important we have a heart symbol, and that doesn't exactly look like a human or an animal heart. Based on the heart-shaped people leaves, the heart logo goes back to the artistic depictions of the Indus Valley civilization. There is speculation that this leaf was used as a contraceptive, which is both ironic and makes perfect sense. We're talking as long ago as the 5th or 6th century BC. Over the centuries, the use of the symbol would develop, and by the 16th century in Europe, the heart symbol as we know it would become a visual staple. In so many words, we love to love. Readers, viewers, and superfans all indulge the fantasy of two people connecting, igniting passion, and falling in love. Be it Romeo and Juliet, Bonnie and Clyde, or even Spider-Man and Mary Jane, there have been many stories to tickle that sentimental urge. They say love is in the air, and professional wrestling definitely breathes that very same era. The most memorable and heralded romance in professional wrestling is undoubtedly Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth. In reality, they would be married for a handful of years and would break up with a lot of drama attached. But in professional wrestling, these two were the couple in the 1980s. From heel to face, this relationship was part of one of the biggest eras of the industry. Their conflicts are part of history. Their reunion and wedding brought tears. But there would also be the unexpected romances. Spike Dudley and Molly Holly, Otis and Mandy Rose, Mark Henry and Mae Young. It goes on and includes the likes of Hall of Famers like Chyna and Eddie Guerrero. Then real life meets the screen when behind the scenes relationships become an unscreened story. Everyone knows the backstage politics and workings, so it's only natural that real life relationships become part of the story. With this comes the Stephanie McMahon and Triple H relationship. There's that awkward situation with Edge, Matt Hardy, and Lita. If there is anything that can add fuel to the fire of a story, it's a war of love. And of course, there is just something magical about weddings in professional wrestling. The Nielsen ratings have proven that weddings on wrestling shows is not only memorable, but also a big hit. Of course, we had the aforementioned Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth wedding, but there's more and more that sparks memories in the mind of every longtime wrestling fan. We've seen Triple H marry a passed out Stephanie McMahon in a drive-through Vegas wedding. We've seen the most bizarre of bizarre weddings in Lita marrying Kane. We've even seen heart attacks in the form of Torrie Wilson's father. We professional wrestling fans love our wrestling weddings. If love didn't matter to professional wrestling, there would never be a Brother Love, Angelina Love, Dude Love, or any of the Love family. In the world of brutes that battle it out over championship belts and grudge matches, sometimes it's a refreshing change of pace to see a romance story fill up the many hours of wrestling television. There's nothing that can't be sealed with a kiss. Action figures. For centuries, statues were erected for highly regarded people. For many of those centuries, children also played with dolls. This could be a baby doll, a puppet, or anything one could play with and be enjoyed by a child. As commerce boomed in the 1900s, toys became a huge industry. In 1959, Mattel introduced Barbie, a blonde female doll with fashion accessories and playsets. The Barbie doll was aimed towards girls. It was a huge success. It would not be long before boys would get their own doll outside of Barbie's own boyfriend, Ken. The term action figure was coined by Hasbro in 1964 in a marketing effort to sell G.I. Joes as something other than dolls. From then, action figures would be marketed towards boys as a masculine equivalent to dolls. Of course, now we know kids can play with whatever, and no one should care, but the stigma of boys playing with dolls would be erased with this marketing front. Superheroes, sports stars, television characters, and other popular personas would be made into small statues for children to use to recreate what they've seen and indulge in an imaginative world. Professional wrestling, of course, would not miss another chance to add another product to the merchandise table. Wrestling action figures actually go back to the 1969 Bullmark series, where the Japan Pro Wrestling Alliance released small plastic figures of international legends like Antonio Inoki and the Giant Baba, among others. Then, in 1981, the company called Poppy released a set of wrestling action figures as well. Still, the story of professional wrestling action figures must be told through the eyes of a WWF fan. In 1984, WWF would sign on with a company called LJN. The WWF Superstar Series would be launched. Standing in at 8 inches tall, each superstar came with a biography card on the outside packaging and included a poster inside. The consumer was definitely getting their money's worth, as these non-posable rubber figures would rule the land. LJN would provide us with 6 single series and 1 set of tag team box sets featuring the likes of Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Junkyard Dog, Rowdy Piper, and other icons. The history of professional wrestling figures really begins here. As of 2021, LJN figures would still be a collector's dream, with some rare figures, prototypes, and unique variations still being out there on the market. After LJN's contract ended and the company was sold, the WWF would have to seek another company to produce their figures. Enter Hasbro. From 1990 to 1994, Hasbro would produce 11 different series of figures, and various rings, and tag team packages. Made up of mostly hard plastic, these 4-inch figures would finally have some articulation in the form of spring-loaded signature moves like big punches, clotheslines, drop kicks, and slams. Each figure would again include a biography card in the back of the package, but no posters this time. When they are cranking out 11 series in less than 5 years, there's no time for posters. Hasbro would have the same icons of the 80s as LJN and Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Macho Man, and others. However, they would also introduce the world to the first figures of the likes of Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon, Mr. Perfect, IRS, Owen Hart, 1-2-3 Kid, and Yokozuna, among many other future legends. Hasbro collectors will pay top dollar to relive their childhoods and hoard mint uncard figures, as well as any weird variation they can get their hands on. Some have paid upwards of $15,000 or more to be able to claim ownership for figures as obscure as a rhythm and blues black-haired version of Greg the Hammer Valentine. This is just one example of other crazy dealings all over action figures. And let's not even get into the moon on the belly version of the Hasbro Kamala. And then from 1994 to 1996, professional wrestling fans felt a void of no company making action figures. Thankfully, in 1996, Jakks Pacific made the run-in. From 1996 until December of 2009, Jakks would capitalize on the Attitude Era with numerous series of the Superstars line and then tons of other series. Jakks made plenty of wrestling fans happy with bone-crunching action and with more articulation that has been seen or played with before. With Jakks, you get the first Stone Cold Steve Austin action figure, the first Rock, first Mankind, and first of many legends. Over this 12+ year relationship, Jakks released other sets including the Stomp series, Signature series, and then the Ruthless Aggression set. Ruthless Aggression would feature 15 points of articulation and would be considered Jakks' most successful line. The innovations did not end there. The inclusion of the WWE Classic Superstars line would showcase legends, alumni, and heroes from the past. Then, on January 1st, 2010, WWE.com would announce a new line of figures with a new company, Mattel. During the ongoing decade of innovation, Mattel has created hundreds of WWE action figures. We've seen entrance greats, legends, and the awe-striking Elite Series, the same size as Jakks, but a whole lot more detailed. These action figures have brought, and as of now, continue to bring, the action. In 2019, Mattel launched their Ultimate WWE Series. These ongoing sets showcase the biggest stars with the most options for posing, often including multiple heads, with multiple expressions, different hand poses, and a plethora of accessories. The innovation continues to this day, making fans and collectors excited about every new announcement. Outside of the WWE lineage, professional wrestling action figures have been put out by other companies. In '85, AWA would team up with Remco for smaller sized figures. These two-pack saw Greg Gagne and Jim Brunzell, Steve Keirn and Stan Lane, and the ever so awesome duo of Larry Zbyszko and Ric Flair. In 1990, WCW released Rubber Twistables, showcasing their biggest stars at the time, like Sid Vicious, the Steiner Brothers, and of course, Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Then, in the same year of '90, Galoob would drop their own line of WCW figures. A blink of an eye later, in 1995, original San Francisco toy makers would also team up with WCW for LJN comparable pieces of rubber. These big clunky figures would not be posable. Then in 1998, original San Francisco toy makers would also drop a slightly more posable figure around the time the NWO and Crow Sting were tearing up the Nielsen ratings. The same company would release figures for ECW in 1999. This awesome lineup had all of the ECW greats, from the franchise Shane Douglas, New Jack, Sabu, Rob Van Dam, and other Extreme icons. In 1999, Toy Biz released what would have been WCW's last figure line. This set was by far the most detailed of any of WCW's run, and had articulation comparable to what would be WWE's run with Mattel. This was a set way before its time. Outside of WCW and ECW, wrestling figures would exist from other companies. The 2005 Marvel line of TNA Impact action figures existed. They weren't exactly selling out, but some were very nice figures. Outside of the dollar store knockoffs, the wrestling action figure scene would be desolate unless you were living within WWE's timeline. That was until 2020, when Jazzwares connected with All Elite Wrestling. These AEW figures are on par with the best of what Mattel has put out for WWE, but it also features the likes of Orange Cassidy, Darby Allin, Jungle Boy, MJF, and the rest of this star-studded roster. There does not look to be any end to this relationship. Anyone who grew up with wrestling would have a hard time not strolling by the toy aisle just to check out what's new with wrestling figures. There are websites delving deep into this world of wrestling figures. There are podcasts that cover past, present, and future action figures. Some of these podcasts even involve lifelong fans who also happen to have figures made of themselves. Yes, even the wrestlers can be fans of wrestling toys. People collect everything they can if it has either financial or emotional value. Professional wrestling toys provide both. What was once a chance to escape as a child is now a chance to reflect on great times as an adult collector. Whether you buy the figures to open or quote-unquote let them breathe, as a former WrestleMania winner would say, or keeping them mint on card, a collection means a lot to a fan. If it's a $15,000 prototype, or just a figure that keeps that peg very warm. And at the end of the day, the dream is always alive in the form of action figures. Cage matches. Captivity comes in many forms. The idea of a cage match goes back as far as practical has been practical. A cage is used to contain livestock and also a prison to keep bad people away from the general public. It's also used for cage fighting. In professional wrestling, the cage should be looked at from 3 perspectives: structure, booking, and the legacy. The structure of a cage in professional wrestling varies. NWA, WCW, ECW, and later WWE would use a normal cage, a chain-linked fence connected by steel pipes. This is the tradition, the standard if you will, of a cage in professional wrestling. The old school WWF cage was an awesome blue barred nightmare. It was a big metal structure with big open spaces between bars and left many fans of that time period with many great memories. Various companies have adopted a war game style match. 2 rings and 1 gigantic cage around the entire monstrosity. These matches have been historic and the excellence in the art of violence. The booking of a cage match is simple. It draws, and when something draws, it means more money is made. It's often used as a culmination of a big money feud that needs a big blow-off match that will sell tickets, the pay-per-views, and be the end-all of anticipation and closure between 2 rivals that despise one another. It could be because a bad guy keeps trying to get away, or having outside forces interfere, and this is the only way to keep a fight uncontested. Or it may be 2 wrestlers that hate each other so much that something barbaric is needed to finally settle the score. Regardless, it draws. It's a gimmick that storytellers use to raise eyebrows, get people excited, and get them to spend their hard-earned money. That doesn't mean there isn't art to the cage match. The legacy of a cage match in professional wrestling goes back to the late 1930s in Atlanta, Georgia, where Jack Bloomfield and Count Pedro Rossi fought in a ring surrounded by chicken wire. The traditional steel cage would come into play in 1942 in Ontario, Canada, at a show that saw John Catton defeat Ignacio Martinez. This would evolve and become a featured attraction across all territories. By the mid-70s, Bruno Sammartino was taking on Lou Albano in a cage match for the WWF World title, while Wahoo McDaniels was taking on Ric Flair in a cage match of their own. By this point, it would always be an ace up any matchmaker's sleeve to use to make a match just that much more special. The quality of cage matches would vary, but there have been many great matches and memorable moments over the decades past. A moment that is instilled into the minds of older fans and fans of Mick Foley is when Jimmy Snuka dove off of a cage against Bob Backlund at a WWE MSG show. There was also Starrcade 83 that saw Ric Flair defeat Harley Race. For many longtime fans, the NWA Starrcade 85 I Quit cage match always comes to mind when discussing this gimmick match. Magnum TA would defeat Tully Blanchard by attempting to stab his opponent in the eye with the broken leg of a chair. Bret Hart and Owen Hart stole the show at the SummerSlam event held at the United Center in 1994. Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon even held a memorable cage match at St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Hell in a Cell would see the likes of Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker define the match, and then Undertaker and Mankind redefine it with some of the most memorable moments in professional wrestling. The 2-ring cage war games was done first by NWA, but NXT, MLW, AEW, and recently GCW have all done their own version. Tag teams would also have their own moments in the cage as well, with the likes of the Dudleys and Hardys at Survivor Series 2001, or even Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers at All Out 2021. And that's just a very few of the legendary matches that have taken place inside of an unforgiving steel structure. It goes on and on. A cage match can even make a not so good matchup turn out at least okay or watchable. It's a cage match. It's always worth stopping for a moment and checking it out. It's always the in-the-moment excitement and big spots that make these matches so special. The cage matches that end with someone climbing over the top and escaping are fun. This extra feat does add to the anticipation. But the classic cage match, however, is sold as no one can enter, no one can leave. And it's a great spectacle of brutality. It ends when someone gives up or is pinned. Regardless, it would be hard to imagine professional wrestling without the signature cage match. As the owner of the NWA once sang, "Despite of my rage, I'm still just a rat in a cage." Battle Royals. Combat sports goes back many millenniums. The Battle Royal goes back many centuries. It's as simple as putting a few people in one space and letting them go at it until there is one last person standing. Sadly, history would determine that this also includes slave fights going back to the early 18th century, where barbaric and horrible people were barbaric and horrible. This should definitely be noted, but Battle Royals, how we know them today, are much more innocent and is pretty much just another match type. It was also originally a fight between multiple boxers. They'd abide by the rules of boxing, but in essence, it was fisticuffs in the form of a free-for-all. This was often the opening bout for wrestling and boxing shows from around the 1870s until the 1910s. It would still linger in some areas, but would eventually fade away over the 1950s. It's a big spectacle and a big brawl. So of course, professional wrestling would adopt it. The idea of a battle royal in wrestling goes back to Toots Mondt, a member of the Gold Dust Trio, the group of groundbreakers of what professional wrestling would become. Toots took the boxing fight gimmick and put his own spin on it. A battle royal in professional wrestling does not involve gloves. It typically involves a dozen to dozens of wrestlers fighting it out in the ring. Then the object is to toss everyone over the top rope with their feet hitting the ground. Rinse and repeat until there is one wrestler left, the victor. The chaos of a ring full of wrestlers trying to be the sole winner of such a crazy match is as exciting as anything professional wrestling can visually provide. It would be a staple in wrestling across the modern eras. Then, in 1988, the World Wrestling Federation introduced the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble is the most famous of battle royals. Until this point, all wrestlers would enter the ring before the match started. However, the Royal Rumble would use a random drawing gauntlet format that added another level of anticipation and surprise. The winner would ceremoniously receive a shot at the world title at WrestleMania, making it a highly sought after feat. Mostly all companies eventually have a battle royal on their card, but some companies have put their own spin on it, as WWF did with the Rumble. WCW would have the Lethal Lottery Battle Royal that saw the winners of a series of randomly drawn tag team matches all enter the main event Battle Royal to win a fancy ring. While this was fun, it wasn't as big as the Royal Rumble, so they tried to outdo with mass in terms of the World War III Battle Royal with 60 men in 3 rings. All Elite Wrestling has their own spin on the traditional Battle Royal with their Casino Battle Royal. It's the same concept as the Royal Rumble, but it's not a 1-by-1 entrance. It's broken down into groupings, with one final Joker card entering at the end. Major League Wrestling has their Battle Riot, which uses the Rumble rules as well, but their spin is that eliminations happen via pinfall, submission, or being thrown over the top rope. Whether the competitors enter every minute or so, or the competitors are all piled into the ring at the start of the match, Battle Royals are always fun to see. If there's enough of variety in styles, a Battle Royal can be a virtual buffet of brutality. There's the standards that every good Battle Royal has. It's unlikely allies teaming up to get out a bigger wrestler. It's the likely allies tossing each other out in their pursuit of solo glory. Then there's the teases where someone, somehow, in some way, does not get eliminated. It could be as simple as someone catching you and putting you back in the ring. This is often used by bad guys, but has also been seen by a share of good guys using the tactic. There's showcases of jaw-dropping athleticism, like when Shawn Michaels would pull himself back into the ring with a move dubbed Skinning the Cat, which was essentially a 360-degree pull-up, hanging from the top rope and bringing yourself back to your feet into the ring. Others have combined this display of physicality with a display of creativity, as Kofi Kingston has done in multiple situations. He has done many outrageous and awesome things to ensure his feet did not touch the ground. Winning a Battle Royal can sometimes win someone a championship, make them a contender, or just provides a big stakes bragging right. As the anticipation builds, the crowd cheers, the crowd boos, tensions are tested, and the audience is taken on a roller coaster of emotions from the sounding of the ring bell until the final feet hit the floor. Authority figures. No one wants to be told what to do. The everyday man has everyday bosses. These bosses give us assignments, things that need to be done, and the majority are unlikable. In professional wrestling, it is very rare that an authority figure is a kind-hearted person. They are portrayed as vindictive, mean, and downright evil. However, we still have authority figures in our lives that tell us what to do. The traditional family unit has parents that tell children how to live their lives as they grow up. And while we grow up, we experience many others that dictate our fates. There is the law that governs the land. There are teachers that assign us homework. We have officials in sports to uphold the rules of the game. And for many, there are religious deities that we set our moral compasses to. Then we do grow up. We can start to make our own decisions. Except we have to work, so we have bosses. Like Huey Lewis's angelic voice tells us, we're all working for a living. Bosses control our focus for sometimes 40 plus hours a week. Sometimes we get fed up and quit these jobs, but most of the time, we accept our place as a cog in the wheel and just do what we have to do. It's a status that we all have to deal with, a common man issue that many people feel very strongly about. So of course, professional wrestling would delve into these emotions and present their own authority figures. There have been a large variety of authority figures in wrestling of different types. In the early days of wrestling, the authority figure would be the commissioner or president of the company. They would step in and make matches, break up fights, hand out fines, and put their foot down when things got too heated. The National Wrestling Alliance would rely on a championship committee to make big decisions on big matches. With this and NWA and later WCW and TNA, there would be a representative of the committee in the form of legends like Dusty Rhodes and Larry Zbyszko. There would be Eric Bischoff running WCW and then Dixie Carter running TNA Impact. Pretty much every smaller company since, from Paul Heyman and ECW to random guy at your random local indie, they've all had their own authority figure. There would be many notable figures and beloved characters, but no one really nailed the performance of this role quite like the WWE. The WWF, and later the WWE would always uphold someone to the highest position. From its founding in 1963 all the way until 1997, the president ruled the show. The World Wrestling Federation would feature Jack Tunney, a longtime Canadian promoter and performer, that would suspend those who got too vicious, announce big matches, and in the case of the Royal Rumble in 1994, would make the big decision to hold a coin toss between the two winners of the match. This would evolve to others like legends Gorilla Monsoon and then Sergeant Slaughter as those who would lay down the law. As the 90s progressed, these figures would become more and more part of the storylines. This would eventually blow up when Vince McMahon would begin to showcase his real-life authority on camera with a heinous Mr. McMahon character. When you have a personality as big as Mr. McMahon, you would need a foil for him. Stone Cold Steve Austin would become a natural choice for this endeavor. Some of the most entertaining moments of the Attitude Era saw the Tom and Jerry-like war between McMahon and the Texas Rattlesnake. If all good things do come to an end, it would be inevitable that a great feud like this would also come to pass. However, the authority figure persona would remain. Iconic wrestlers like Shawn Michaels, Mick Foley, William Regal, and others would take on roles as the commissioner. Then the role would be changed to general managers, with the WWE splitting rosters between two shows. Each presentation would have an authority figure to ensure the inmates never ran the asylum. If there was a brawl between multiple wrestlers, it would be expected for Teddy Long to come out and book a tag team match. Or, if you were being a real pest, he'd book you to go one-on-one with The Undertaker to set you right. It goes on and on. There was even a time period in WWE where a ringside laptop would run the show and make big decisions. There is nothing like getting off school, clocking out from work, or just kicking back after a long day and watching the escapism that is Raging Against the Machine. Being able to live out our disruptive dreams in a scenario of speaking up for yourself, taking your fate into your own hands, or just beating up those who have told you no, is a precious gift. We really do not like being told what to do, so why wouldn't our professional wrestling heroes feel the same way? As Stone Cold Steve Austin proved in all of his glory, you don't have to take it. You can just kick your employer in the gut, drop them with a Stone Cold Stunner, and celebrate with copious amounts of beer. Obvious distractions. We are all suckers for some kind of illusion. Some of us are put in awe from the sight of a magic trick. A lot of us fall for the illusion of love, only seen in trashy romance novels. There is a big chunk of the masses who believe in a magical being controlling our existence. Ghosts are real. Aliens are among us. And if you ask some people, the Earth itself is flat. And of course, magnets. How do those work? There is a logical answer to everything, but for whatever reason, we mentally block logic on some things and just let ourselves get caught up in the magic. We benefit from the escapism, while the performer or source benefits from pulling it off convincingly. In professional wrestling, falling for the trick often results in defeat or looking like a fool. There are some weird aspects about professional wrestling that people just accept for no reason, and stupid reasons where a wrestler is so easily distracted is a common, recurring trope. And these scenarios are often pretty lame. Wrestler A is in the ring for a match, and Wrestler B's music hits, distracting Wrestler A long enough for whoever his opponent is to roll them up and pin them or attack them from behind. It's not just music. Wrestler B can just walk out and get attention. This results in Wrestler A automatically forgetting that they're in a match and they're in a fight. So they scowl and shake their fist at Wrestler B, often to their own detriment. Then there's always that sneak attack. Wrestler A is in the ring. Wrestler B's entrance music hits, and Wrestler A turns their attention to the entranceway. And then Wrestler B enters from behind and attacks stupid Wrestler A. Or Wrestler A hits a big move that takes out Wrestler B. It seems legit. The medical staff enters the ring, and they are legitimately hurt. Or so we think. Then there's the old Eddie Guerrero trick. Eddie gets the referee to look away, tosses Wrestler A chair, falls like Wrestler A hit him with a chair, with the anticipation of Wrestler A getting called for disqualification. All in all, Wrestler A is pretty stupid. Yes, we still cheer them on. We still want to see them get their comeuppance. We still allow the excitement of them winning a big match make or break our day. And of course, we still jump from the edge of our seats, shouting, "Quick, look behind you." Mask. Art has dictated the term mask as a face without a body. Many forms of masquerade goes back to the BC times where masks were made of stone. However, the true invention and origins remain an anthropological mystery. Over multiple millennia, many cultures would adopt their own masked rituals. It's an imaginative experience that has played a vital part in the history of humanity. It's more than just a mere piece of costume. A mask serves many purposes. It could be to withhold one's identity. It could be for protection. It could be for ceremony. In professional wrestling, masks have been used for all these reasons and more. At the 1865 World's Fair in Paris, Theobald Barr introduced the mask to wrestling under the gimmick of the Masked Wrestler. Mort Henderson would introduce his gimmick of the Masked Marvel in America in 1915. When we're talking about masks in wrestling, one must delve into the world of lucha libre. The history of the lucha libre style of wrestling has roots embedded in acrobatic masked combat. Mexico is often credited as the originator of mask, with hyperbole of mythical ancient roots, but that's not the real story. After seeing Cyclone McKee, an American masked wrestler in Texas, a Mexican promoter would not only bring him to their territory, but adopt the mask for a whole new culture of professional wrestling fans. The company EMLL would essentially take the mask and run with it. They created many masked characters showcasing different personas that would become the standard in lucha libre. The craftsmanship of these masks is a true skill of art and elaborate creativity. This would lead to a plethora of masked performers who have made a flipping splash in the history of wrestling. The Villanos, La Parca, El Santo, and others would become world famous for their mask and their skills in the ring. The prolific Mil Mascaras was so popular in the 1960s and 70s that he would become a cultural icon. In Mexico, the mask is treated as sacred, with most masked wrestlers refusing to let their real face ever be seen. If a masked wrestler was being interviewed by the media, the mask would remain on. If they were in movies or just doing everyday things in the public, the mask would always remain on. There have been many luchador performers to wear a mask from the past, present, and future generations, but the most famous modern-day masked wrestler is without a doubt Rey Mysterio. Mysterio has held many championship belts and has been involved in many historical moments. And just about all those championships and moments have been while wearing majestic masks. There have been other performers to wear masks in history as well. A prime example is Mr. Wrestling. Mr. Wrestling 2, 3, 4, 5, and likely even more. Japan has seen a few generations of tiger mask performers. There was Big Van Vader's evil jockstrap mask, Kane's haunting leather mask, and Mankind's sadistic brown leather mask as well. The Fiend's horror-inspired mask is one of the more recent additions to the lore of iconic masks. There have been the likes of Mortis, Juan Cena, Abyss, Aldo Montoya, The Executioners, The Patriot, and hundreds of others. It's just another visual to add to the show, but it's not a crutch. If a wrestler is great, mask or not, they will be successful. If someone isn't that great, there is no mask that will make them any better. For many, the true workings of what it takes to create something magical in professional wrestling is never fully understood. An element like a mask only adds to the mystery. Great promos. Speaking with conviction is what riles up the troops, gets people on your side, and helps convince someone of a story being told. A carnival barker will use inflection and excitement to sell a ticket. In boxing, greats like Muhammad Ali would showcase a witty and confident attitude in pre-fight interviews that would make people want to buy tickets and tune in. Great promos are definitely a way to promote, so it would be a logical connection to sell tickets for professional wrestling. A great promo in professional wrestling is a performance within itself. It's verbally enticing emotion, engaging the crowd, and capturing the energy of those in attendance to give a matchup or the story being told more life than what would initially be on paper. The mouthpieces of professional wrestling would notoriously be managers, those who would accompany the wrestler to the ring, interact with the audience, and be the vocal representation. Icons like Paul Heyman, Bobby Heenan, Jim Cornette, the Grand Wizard, and a slew of managers would grab a microphone and antagonize the audience into hating the bad guy and loving the good guy. There would be numerous Hall of Famers who would be able to back up the action in the ring with great promos. The characters and characterizations of professional wrestling have always been over the top. A good performer can display this in the ring with their work, but can do this both in the ring and behind a microphone. Some are just naturals. They can get their point across with ease and take the crowd on a journey just with the power of their voice. It's an art form that those outside of the fandom of professional wrestling blindly ignore. Like any superhero or action star, there are one-liners that just become famous. Hulk Hogan had "What You Gonna Do?" Macho Man Randy Savage had "Oh Yeah." Stone Cold Steve Austin has "The Bottom Line." Generation X has "Suck It." Bret Hart had his "Best There Is, Best There Was, and Best There Ever Will Be." The Rock has "Do You Smell What the Rock Is Cooking?" Undertaker had "Rest in Peace." This goes on and on. If there's a legend, odds are most of them have their own signature slogan and use it to rile up the crowd. In the earliest years, guys like superstar Billy Graham used his persona to push matches. When you talk to professional wrestling fans who have either lived through it or have done their research, there are a handful of performers who resonate most when it comes to delivering a great promo. Dusty Rhodes spoke the language of the audience. His promos would be both relatable to the common man while providing hope that right would overcome the wrong. Ric Flair is known for his woos, but his Nature Boy persona would shine on a microphone. Mick Foley has had different characters, but his talent in capturing the attention and touching the souls of those who are watching is a skill sharper than any skill in human existence. New legends like John Cena, or the older icons like Raven, Jake the Snake Roberts, and the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase would be able to verbally play with the audience's collective emotions like a cat playing with a mouse. Professional wrestling fans love professional wrestling, but it does not end with the action being told between the ropes. Sometimes you need that extra boost to care, the extra kick in the tail to focus on the story being told, or just an extra slap in the face, all to really get your blood pumping. A great promo does just that. Invasion angles. We have been invaded. An invasion is a military action of soldiers entering a foreign land. This has the obvious connotations, and it's also a term attached to the arts. Be it the military attack or being overtaken by aliens, the concept of invasion has been and is an active plotline in both real life and beyond. Our history books are full of real-life examples. The lineage of performance art is also littered with its own depictions. Naturally, professional wrestling would also have its own invasion moments littered throughout its history. During the territory era of wrestling, there would always be a revolving door of talent coming and going on their journey. While one wrestler could technically invade a new promotion, an invasion is also technically a military action. We've had one-man gangs, but a military is never a solo operation. And yes, there would be groups that would arrive to a new area at the same time, but the grandiose moment of invasions would not be as memorable until well into the television era. In the 80s and 90s, there would be invasion moments like Jim Cornette bringing the NWA to WWF, or Paul Heyman bringing his ECW to a WWF Monday Night Raw. Then in the late 90s, professional wrestling fans experienced one of the most unexpected moments. A moment where fans suspended all belief and thought, this is not supposed to happen. This would be the New World Order's invasion of WCW. The initial idea was said to be borrowed from an old storyline of the American company UWF invading New Japan Pro Wrestling. But the NWO was totally its own thing. Former WWF stars and detractors from WCW would come together to run amok for a handful of years that brought WCW its biggest moments, most money, and for 83 weeks, the best television ratings of any professional wrestling show. There would be other invasions after this. D-Generation X was loosely an invasion stable, but more so, they were just disruptors to the norm. WWE would try to recreate the magic by having WCW invade once Vince McMahon bought the company. They would also have Nexus, Retribution, and others enter the scene under the guise of an invasion storyline. Other companies would have invasions of their own. TNA Impact had Aces and Eights invade, and Immortals before them. Ring of Honor would be invaded by independent rivals from CZW. You watch the show, you follow the stories, and you invest yourself into this world of wrestling. And then an invasion shakes things up. A wall you never knew existed is knocked down, and a whole new world of possibility and danger is revealed.